Hello, all you easy listeners out there in YouTube land. PulseX. What is it? Did you get your sacrifice in? Did you get in on PulseX? You're wondering, what could this all be about? No expectation of the work of others. Well, new facts keep coming out. So you may have seen, if you've seen the Twitters, you're interested in this if you've been following Richard Hart's Twitter. So, there's been more and more information released about PulseX. I've made some incorrect assumptions trying to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to talk about my math for PulseX, what it looks like, and how I currently understand PulseX. Maybe I'm wrong. So you guys, if you have alternate theories, you can comment. And this is just how I'm putting the pieces together so far. So welcome again. I'm Top Gun, and this is my look at PulseX. Alright, so warning, I'm not a financial advisor. This is for entertainment. I do moon math. I am a college dropout, and I just found out there was a difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum on November 10th. If I ramble about math, you'll either fall asleep or your head may explode. You have been warned. Alright. Oh, and yes, I got the comment, no more animations. Stick figure layoffs? Well, they don't look happy. We'll see what continues with this situation. So, we'll come back to that in a bit. Now, we're going to head over to my lovely Internet Explorer. Well, Google Chrome. Alright, so yes, this is the hex price. This is not Pulse Math. Let's go to Pulse Math. Not going to toy with you guys. We're going to come straight in here. However, the crystal ball and all this jazz, I'm going to have you look at some of the other math today. We're going to really dive into this thing because I know you guys want to see it, kind of how it's built. I've shown you a little bit of how to toy with liquidity pool math. So here's the facts as I understand for PulseX. PulseX. 1. It is deflationary. Okay. 2. Well, the deflation, the buyback and burn has not changed. So the buyback burn has not changed from original. Well, what does that mean? That means all the extra stuff I was doing in my math was unnecessary, all that stuff that slowed it down. So I may have to apologize for calling PulseX broken because it's going to make us all filthy rich. It just seems broken, like too impossibly rich. So I found some other ways to toy with it. Slow down the math. Now, so the buyback and burn has not changed. So 21% of all fees collected, and or another way of looking at it is 0.07% of all volume swapped. Alright, so that's of the fees, that's of the volume swapped. It is the same number. I can't spell. We love that. VS. Pretend I know what I'm doing. Alright, so we came here for the math. PulseX is deflationary. The buyback has not changed. This is the amount that buys back and burns. Okay, but then we know that the devs referenced this 0.07 buy pool as where the PulseX comes from. PX. Well, wait a minute. But if it's going to a dumpster and being burnt, how can it be funding this? This is the hang up here. We got some problems. Well, I finally remembered Richard Hart. He had a vid. And what did he say in his vid? Something about Pulse X swap for PulseX. Okay. Well, that sounds pretty ridiculous. That sounds really ridiculous. How can you swap PulseX for PulseX? Well, that's kind of the point. You can swap USDC for Hex, or Hex for USDC, but both sides of the pair are not PulseX and PulseX. Ever. You might have PulseX and USDC or PulseX and Hex. You won't have PulseX. So let's take a look at a moment here for swap fees or the swap pool. What's generated here? Alright, well, when you swap hex for something, oh, you're gonna have to pay a fee in hex. And when you swap, oh, let's say your pulse for something, you pay a fee in pulse. Oh, when you swap, your e-hex because you have it on the exchange, you'll have to pay a fee in that. Doggy coin 1, or you'll just call it doggy coin 1, doggy coin 2, doggy coin 3, doggy coin 1800, like all through those. Whatever the swap fee here, let's make sure it's important. Everyone's paying attention to it. This is the swap fee. So all of these are collected when you trade something for something else. Well, people are going to trade their PulseX for something occasionally. So now let's assume that we've got a whopping 9% of the fees here. It would really help if I just actually formatted and typed here. Alright, so we'll go all the way down here in formatting, and let's make this percent so everyone can see. And even here, we're going to make this an auto sum. And it's going to be of this range, so we can make our point. So let's say PulseX makes up a whopping 1% of the fees. Okay. Maybe that's even a little high. Let's go ahead and make that 0.1%. It seems like a negligible number. And we'll even make that 0.9%. So, I thought I formatted all of these. Alright, so now we can go ahead and do some math here to, oh wow, it just loses the percent. Cool. Okay, I type 9 here. Oh, if I use a decimal it doesn't get happy. That's what happens. Okay, so 0.209. Alright, figuring out what's happening here. 8. Okay, 20. Alright, 35. Okay, and let's make this 17. And we'll make this 10. Oops, make this 10%. Make it seem like I know what I'm doing. Oh my god. I hate Google Sheets. Oh, look, there, we have our magic number. Alright, great, 100% of the fee pool. So that is 100% of this number or this number. Alright, like whatever the fees collected, addresses with no expectation. So you can't trade PulseX for PulseX when he originally messaged that. So, PulseX to PulseX equals no. Can't do that. So these were negligible. So I didn't include them in my original math because I thought, oh, Richard Hart is smart. He'll figure out something to do with this. You can't use the PulseX to buy PulseX. So that part of the pool has to be left out. Oh, but that's a negligible difference in the buyback and burn, and considering I'm scaling Uniswap, I didn't bother including it. And I thought, he's a smart guy. He'll figure out some other way. He'll just burn it without buying it, Or no expectations. Like somewhere, it'll go. I was not worried about this negligible number. Where could it be going? Wait, did we mention that it is deflationary? However, you can stake your incentive token possibly for PulseX. That means, this negligible part we can't use has somewhere to go. So it is part of that pool, but not the entire pool, not really part of it that had to be scaled or chosen, the part that couldn't be used. This makes more sense. Richard Hart has not come out straight out and said this. This is just my theory. This is my assumption. Oh, alright. So the buyback and burn, as I saw it, would really be unaffected. Okay. So we can go back here and go back to the buyback and burn. And so where I had set the burn amount and scaled it down, we just going to set that burn amount right back to 100% of the pool is getting burned. Now, how can I still have this owner's stake percentage, like amount staked, what they're going to get out of the pool, and try and be messing around with this math? So if I change that, it does change the numbers, but not a lot now. So people stake, this is a way that I'm scaling down for potentially, we don't know how much of that pool, that little negligible amount, will be there, but it will have a little bit of impact on the system. So why delete the math entirely? But it doesn't need to be changed or scaled so much anymore. And now I'm thinking about, I had this sell curve to this, but I'm thinking about putting the sell curve to this, update the math. So that way, all right, we can actually see long term what the internal sell pressure from the price might be like, countering the buy pressure. Again, not accounting for outside market pressure coming in. Now, I did something else kind of interesting with this math. So what if we could scale the liquidity pool size? Because I said we don't know what the liquidity pool size is, right? We really don't. So we know that the creator likes to use small liquidity pools. Oh, here's my Uniswap math. We'll come back to that some other time in the future. So this number here. Wow, alright. Well, it says 3, but we're going to make it equal to... Did I go too far down? Here we go. Alright, we're going to make it equal to... this cell here. Alright. Now this will have broken all my math, unless I go ahead and put a 3 here. That'll fix my math. Alright. Why do I have a 3? Why do I have a 3? So let's start this off at 1. This is a very small liquidity pool. So with it at 1, we can come up here and let's have a look at these numbers today. So in here I have some other projects I was building the sheet to run prices on, and I will come back for other projects later. But in the meantime, what we're looking at is the PulseX one. So in here, I made these scalable by that number to multiply the sides. So multiply by 1, they do not change, and they are Hex's liquidity pools. So we have Hex above at a different price, and the K constant is the same, so it's the same liquidity pool size, just balanced differently. So this is the Hex size. Okay, this is what I've used for my math, and I've allowed myself to be able to scale it as well. The Teeter-totter experiment right over here, this is the kind of math that I'm using to be able to move the price from Hex to what I assume PulseX's start price will be, so I have somewhere to work from. So now that, alright, I figured that's the start price, that's good. I know the liquidity pool size. Now, as I've said, when you trade against the liquidity pool, you have to divide one side, like if you double one side, times it by 2, you have to divide the other side by 2. That's how you trade against it. But a little more simple, if you're making it bigger or you're making it smaller, if you double one side, you have to double the other side. If you half one side, you have to half the other side. That's how you take your liquidity in and out. So in this scale, I just tipped it so instead of trading against, alright, so if I double the amount of money in it and double the amount of tokens in it, that's the new liquidity pool size that I'm using. So, okay, alright, seeing how this is working. So I can up this up, let's make it 3, and we can see the estimated LP size number shifting when we shift this number. So yeah, up here. Oh yeah, I scaled it even from another number. I think it got it even smaller because it's funny. Oh yeah, that is big. That's a 15 and a 16. That's why. Scientific numbers. I was like, wait a minute, I thought that got smaller. Okay. So now, what if we want to get to 100 times on either side, 10,000 bigger for the number? Let's have a look here, and I did some numbers for Pulse, the Pulse liquidity pool. Notice that's to an E of 21, an exponent of 21. Wow. Does that actually mean that even 100 does not get us there? That is what that means, folks. So now we have a liquidity pool the size of Pulse, the entire Pulse ecosystem. 1,000. This will not happen. That is ridiculous, but this is conservative math now. This is all in its best conservative settings, where, alright, we have the full amount for buyback and burn. We even include a little sell-off from people panicking in the first. We'll even step it up to 20% with this buyback and burn. The owners in the stake, that's just a little bit of sell pressure on the system inside, not all of it. So we have buy pressure and sell pressure from inside, but we do not have external sell, external buy, like the sentimentality. Okay, so with it built from the inside, doing all of this, alright, well, we'll even make this more conservative. I think we'll post this number up here. Alright, so at all these conservative settings, absolutely most conservative settings that I can possibly wrangle out, well, $1,000 is $3,000 at the end of a year. End of the 5-year, 3,006. Like, that is really slow and sluggish. Also, really, do you want to see how much value has to go in that? How much money would have to be paired? Oh, just a cool $2 billion to make that liquidity pool function at that price. Just $2 billion. That's all you got to drop in actual cash or USDC, not in asset. Like, oh, wow. So that might be a little ridiculous. Let's scale that down a notch. Oh, what's this? We just had some change here. And how did I mess something up with my math? As this gets smaller, this should get better. There we go. What did I have there? Why does that... Well, that's interesting and funky. Pause time. I think I realized what's happening. That's an even more funky element of math. So, at this size, where the liquidity pool is ginormous, too big to contemplate, $2 billion, we also have to have a ridiculous amount of tokens in here. So, thousands, millions, billions, 1 trillion. So 1 trillion tokens would have to go in here, and that's where I get a funny thing with this huge sell-off effect. So there's a point where the system will have a harder time eating a sell-off like that, which is funny enough at this liquidity pool size. It's like a bell curve kind of effect here. So yeah, so with this, it puts more tokens in the system. Once this shrinks down, it actually creates a negative price point at this. But yeah, once we go back down to, just a little bit bigger, we finally see the positive reaction coming back into the system. I think part of this is set way too high. I'm going to set this back down to 10, because that won't happen to the price anyway. Yeah, I gotta toy with this math a little more. It was meant for something else. It's not 100% accurate, and I created kind of like a curve effect. If you're programming AI and you look at how they do epochs and how they do learning ratios and the curve for data inputs, I accidentally created a curve graph that infinity scale down and then flip around on itself. I'm not going to go into the math on that, but this step math still works in its simpler form. So 10 times on either side, which is really 20 times the size of liquidity that's actually there, or 10 times. Well, I mean, either side, when you see, liquidity, say it's 1 million on the one side, and then tokens, technically it's $2 million worth of tokens with $2 million worth of money. So, or $1 million worth of tokens, $1 million worth of money. Wow, making $2 million. Mouthfuls. Maybe I should just draw it on Excel so I'm not confusing people. Wow. So anyways, this is 10 times larger than X on either side. This is a large liquidity pool. This slows this beast down. We're not very bullish, just doing 1% of what Uniswap does, just a $1,000 investment. Well, that $1,000 investment only worth $600 at the end of the year. That sounds pretty crappy. $14,000 at the end of 5 years. But here's the numbers we're going to play with. Now that we all have this set, $1,000 sacrificed on day one of the sacrifice. Bullish. Now that we have bullish here, 1%. Well, what do you think? We can do 5% of the business that Uniswap does in a year? Steal 5% of the Ethereum customers? Oh, now we got some reaction. Now she's a kicking, and this is again with a highly inflated liquidity pool, not just the one that Hex has. This is slowing it down. Wow. All right, that's 1 year. What's 5? What's the end of 5? $357,000. All right, wow. Now, Goldilocks range. I like 10%. I think we can steal 10% of the customers that Uniswap has and maybe get that through onboarding new people and just having our Hex community. I think that's possible. $1,000 worth of Pulse could easily be worth $57,000 worth of Pulse if you had not staked. This is if you had not staked. Now, price chart's nice. Alright. $1.4 million in 5 years at this math. That sounds reasonable. That sounds cool. That sounds conservative because I have everything cranked down. So this would be the warning part of the video where I always joke like, welcome to the danger zone. So yeah, if you have a pacemaker, you're in a hospital bed, you don't want to see the moon math here. This is where now we're going to start cranking this stuff up for higher expectations. Have no expectations of the work of others, folks. Okay, for bullish 10%, what do you think about 25%, folks? Can we do 25% of their business? Wow. In the first year, if we do 25% of their business, $1,000 invested for the sacrifice could easily be worth $354,000 if no outside market pressure bought or sold. Oh, wow. What about the 5 year? Do we want to go down to the 5 year? $8.8 million. Wow. Alright. Moon math away. If you want to see 50%, what if we can do actually half as good as Uniswap does in a year by stealing half of the Ethereum customers? And then we have new customers too, but that's how it goes too. Let's just say 50%. $1.4 million in the first year. Do we want to see the 5 year forecast? Do we want to see the 5 year forecast on that? $35.5 million is what that $1,000, if you got it in, could be worth. If you got that in day one, if we're using all these settings, which are more and more accurate the more information I get, I still have to correct that one bit of math though for this. Don't need a curve. Yeah. Anyway, bullish. Alright, let's take this up a notch. 75%. Can we do 3/4 as good as Uniswap does by stealing half the customers and onboarding new users in a bull market? Whoa. $3.1 million at the end of So, okay, we're going to stop looking at the 5-year forecast, 79 million. That's where we're in heart pace for that territory. What if we can do just as good? Our fees are cheaper. We're going to be pulling people off Ethereum. We're going to be on ramping new users. We can do just as good in our first year as Ethereum does. 5.5 million. Wow. And I gave people some expectations here. Let's set this back to 10%. Oh yeah, I could crank this up. So if I change it to 3.33333333, this means that when you square that, it'll be basically a 10. So the K number is 10 times bigger. That's the size of liquidity. Just instead of 15, it's 16. Okay. Whoa. Whoa. At 10%, that 1 million is worth 500,000 at the end of the year in our 10% range, and our liquidity pool's just a bit bigger than X. Okay, it's 25%. 3 million. No way. Oh, let's have a look at 50%. 11 million at the end of a year. That just can't be right, right? Let's take a look at 75%. 26 million at the end of the year. Oh, golly gee. No way. We couldn't do as good as them, could we? $36 million at the end of a year of running. I haven't even looked at the 5-year forecast, folks. I don't think we should. Give some people some higher tax. So, let's make it the size of Hex. We know the creator likes small liquidity pools, and we know that he likes the size of the Hex liquidity pool. There's the size of the Hex liquidity pool. There's a 10%. There's $5 million at the end of a year. So people from inside are going to be selling, and they're going to be selling a lot to take the profits. Please understand that. This will not be the price. This is the pressure from inside, like a big whale swimming along with us, pumping this in. Yeah, we're going to look at 25%. 30 million. That's just outrageous. That can't be. Well, we're going to look at 50%. 121 million. Oh, are you guys like, hold on to your pacemakers? I have said warning, warning, warning. 75%. That can't be right. $271 million from that whale swimming along us, that buyback and burn whale doing that to our bags. No way. What if we could get to 100% of the business that Uniswap does? Oh, golly gee, that's just impossible. That's just impossible. $481 million, that's impossible. What if we did twice as good as Uniswap because their fees are so cheap? Let's just do it, folks. Let's take her to the moon. You want to see it if we did twice as good as Ethereum because it's a bull market. We're going to be the only green asset. Pulse and Hex and Pulse chain, like the whole chain is going to be green. Only green in a sea of red. 200% drawing all the business in, the new customers and everything from Ethereum. Why is that 1.9 billion? Why? That can't be 1.9 billion. Can that be 1.9 billion? That can't be 1.9 billion. Everyone is going to start selling their PulseX off. That is so broken. Warning, warning, warning. Here comes the 5-year forecast. Oh. You can see it does finally start slowing down. It can't handle that kind of pressure. But wait, slowing down. That's $55 billion. That can't be. So in this, you see, I have circulating supply and I have the burn ratio. So technically in this, as I'm keeping track of what's been burnt and what's in the supply, well, not a lot's getting burnt here because nobody's selling because this price is very high on this model. So we've got to play with some more numbers, really. We really got to play with some more numbers. So, simulate some inside market buy pressure or sell pressure over time. We can crank with ease. They're not accurate, but you can see they try to slow this beast down. Oh, it's instead of 55 billion, it's 49 billion. Like, What? And that's that sell pressure from inside. Well, you can see it's actually denting the amount that is no longer available to sell from above, but not a lot. Like, as the price goes up, people will sell. They won't be able to not take these profits. So that'll slow it down. It will not be able to get to this price. But as it's going up, it's going to do a funny thing, it is. And it is, as it goes up, going to attract investors. It is going to attract investors, and is going to do that with the fact that you notice these little plateaus. They're generated by the fact that people from the inside will sell and be even a little more encouraged to sell because they get to stake their PulseX for Pulse. Or, sorry, stake their Pulse incentive token for PulseX. So, this stuff is a mouthful. Why don't we have a look at my theory for the staking in the same thing? Alright, so we know we have the whale tickets. And that is PulseX. Here's the PulseX ticker. Then we know we have incentive token. And it just maybe, might be called PLSX. Like XPLXX. Oh, that is a mouthful. We'll have our native currency on the chain. Okay, and this is Pulse, PLS, no X. Okay, we'll have Hex. Well, sorry, we'll have our digital gold. And we'll have two of them. So we'll have P Hex and we'll have E Hex. Alright. Now we've got some ideas for tokens. So what happens when you do a liquidity pool? Alright, well, let's say I have, just for jokes, 10,000 Hex. Alright, so when the fork happens, I'm going to get 10,000 more Hex. But it's going to be P Hex. It'll be on Pulse Chain, and E Hex will be on Ethereum. Now, if I wanted to, I can bridge my E Hex over to Pulse Chain, where it will become wrapped E Hex, basically, on the Pulse network. So now this is all on the Pulse Chain. Okay. Alright, this is all on the Pulse Chain. Great. So what do I do now? Well, I can take the 10,000 and the 10,000, and I can provide liquidity. Make one of these pools over here, build that. So I could pair it at $1 for ratio for price. That's cool. Now, as people trade against it for Hex and P Hex, I'll earn some fees. These fees will be paid to me out of, as far as I understand it, what's swapped. So E and P Hex. And that's the 73% of fees will go back to the liquidity providers to encourage them to stake up the liquidity. So as people trade up against it, they make money. So, and symbol, there we go. So, there we go. We collect them in the form of this. That's great. And then we also get the incentive token, IT. Well, the incentive token is XPLSX, which is inflationary. Okay, so we get some fees and we get a token. But the token is inflationary. Why should that be valuable? Well, this is where this gets complicated. So now I've taken these to provide liquidity. I can take my XPLSX, and what can I do with it there? I can stake it so I can earn PLSX. Alright, just the first token. Well, that's great. So I can earn that from the fees like we talked about here that cannot be used for the buy. Those can be paid out to the incentive token. But we've also indicated that we can stake PulseX. And it looks like from the tweets that you can stake your PulseX for incentive token. Well, wait a minute. We can stake these for each other? Then doesn't that make a kind of cycle where we just kind of loop back and forth into forever staking for each other? Well, yes, it does. Yes, it does. So even though the XPLX is inflationary, you have a reason to hold it, because the more you stake in there, the more of the PulseX you can claim. And the more PulseX you have, the more you can stake for incentive token or single pair liquidity. So normally you trade against the liquidity pool, but there's a weird function in Uniswap which lets you put in one side that doesn't get traded against whole. That's kind of like staking, and that's what you can do with your PulseX, is provide single paired liquidity. And you can even pair your EHEX and your PHEX with Pulse. So you could have, well, I think that Pulse is very valuable, so I'm only going to put 100 in with a value of 1000. Well, you still get fees, but now it would be in PLS, and we staked in PHEX, so that would be how we get the fees. And then when we stake our incentive and we'll also get incentive token, always the same incentive token. Oh, we're seeing some things happening here. So this couple lines is all about the staking, and this couple lines is all about the liquidity providing for a stock exchange. So that's what we get to do with this thing, is we get to invest our assets over and over again in this loop up here, the lovely loop, which encourages everyone to hold them. And by holding them, like you prove with HEX, if you hold an asset, it gets more valuable because it's more scarce. People want it, demand, supply, pretty simple concepts. So, okay, this kind of tells you what the ecosystem of PulseX is designed to do. But wait, if you act normal, there's more. If you bought enough PulseX tickets, they give you voting rights. Well, what do the voting rights do? Well, now we don't know how the vote is going to be laid out or how they'll work, but basically you vote for your favorite incentive token or favorite pair to be incentivized. So let's say I provide liquidity for PHEX and EHEX, and that's a pair choice. What do you think I'm going to vote for? I'm going to vote for the pair of PHEX and EHEX. Now, what have I done by voting for that pair? Well, let's say that everyone that puts up $1,000 of liquidity in each asset, we don't know what these numbers are like, but if you put $1,000 worth of liquidity in each asset, let's assume that immediately gets you 1% of the supply. I don't know what these numbers would be like. 1%. The idea is now it's inflationary, so as there's more of it, you'd get more, but let's just assume 100 people. Yeah, that's how you get 100%. 100 people put in this much money into liquidity, so they each get 1% of the incentive token that's being generated for a payout. That could be how it works. Like, okay, so that's how you provide liquidity and how you get a little bit of the incentive token. It's one way. It's probably not the math, but now it's inflationary. So as long as no one else comes in and provides liquidity, you'll get a little more and a little more of this token. But yeah, why is it valuable? Well, you can stake it now to get PulseX, which gives you voting rights, which tells you this. So what does the voting right do? Incentivize a pair? Well, let's say one particular pair, since the one pair, the $1,000, is for pair PHEX, EHEX. Oh, well, now that it's incentivized, it gets 2%, and all the other have to split the 98. So it gets extra in tokens. So you can vote. If you provided liquidity, you can vote for your own pair. Now, what are people going to be doing in the system? They're going to want to see pairs between PulseX, HEX, and Pulse. Now, yes, there'll be the EHEX, the PHEX, the PulseX, the XPLX. There'll be pairs for this too. So these will be the pairs which you'll see a lot of people incentivizing, which means they're probably going to get a lion's share of the incentive token. But that might only be a 5% bonus. It might be 100% bonus, like a doubling effect. Don't know the math. This is just the basics of how it works. Is you put in a pair, and since we're a community already built in and sunk into this, we know what we're going to incentivize. more E-hex, P-hex pairs, larger and larger, that'll lock the prices together. More PulseX hex pairs, because guess what? As we get that bigger, well, the price, all that money that went into PulseX that you just saw in that math, will get distributed into hex. Oh, and as we make pairs between PulseX and Pulse, oh, that's what I missed on here was Pulse. So yeah, as we make pairs between these and make them all larger and make pairs of these with PulseX, it's just going to siphon some of the value out of PulseX, but it's going to inject it into Pulse Chain and Hex. So next up, I have to look at the math of how to balance the liquidity pools, which is a little bit of a nightmare. I had some different ways of doing it, like to give you an idea where my brain was going, like, okay, that's an absolute value, that's an absolute value, but wait, how's that calculated now? What are those ratios of bed mass? Oh, why is this referencing so many cells? I'm trying to do too many things at once. So I started simplifying my math a little, like absolute value, okay, a few more pluses and minuses. And here I'm trying to balance liquidity pools for Uniswap version 2 and version 3. If you make a buy on one, how does it affect the other? I'm still toying with this math, so I'm not confident to release it. And so yeah, our main thing is looking at the PulseX math. This is how the staking, that I see it, that it would work in game theory from what I understand from piecing things together. This is, again, yeah, basically the whole value of PulseX is the fact that people want to come and swap all their different doggy token pairs, and that'll generate fees, which generates a buy pressure because that's built in, and those get thrown into a dumpster and burned so they can never fall back on us, which means less and less sale pressure on the market over time. That's what this calculator is meant for. And yeah, we get more and more money injected in the liquidity pool, and boom, those numbers go up and up and up. But like I said, that's ridiculous. So I like my Goldilocks zones. They're usually pretty nice. So my Goldilocks zone, being humble and modest, a bigger liquidity pool than Hex, less volume than Uniswap, with a buyback and burn, a little bit of internal sell pressure, and $1,000. At the wrap up, easily $500,000 at the end of the year. That's the conservative math. That is like, I really, I'll be surprised if we don't see that kind of 5,000x by the end of the year. Because let's go down to the end of the year. Oh, since launch, did I adjust that? Let's do the first one. Month 1 since launch. Okay, yeah, I did. So that's from the starting price, not from the SAC price. This 1,000 is the SAC price we paid, and those X's are just from launch. So yeah, it's a big bada boom, bada bang. That is the fun, folks. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and you've enjoyed the math. Again, I'm going to run through a little bonus since you made it to the end here, and remind everyone, how do you code Fibonacci? Well, Fibonacci is really easy. We say that this field will equal this field plus this field. Alright, that's great. And then, to code Fibonacci, you just extend it into forever. Okay, but still that equals nothing. Why are you doing this to me? Because here's your inputs, 0 and 1. That is Fibonacci. Sequence all the way up as far as you want. That's how Fibonacci grows. What does that spiral means? We're going to be looking into my next video when I dive a little deeper into Hex technical analysis, because I feel a little bit of a market change coming on it. So I think the TA might be useful. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night. Hopefully your head didn't explode. And for all of you that faithfully stayed tuned all the way to the end, here's my Telegram. And oh, look, I even upgraded to Twitter. We're going to try this out. Telegram, Top Gun Crypto School, and Twitter. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night, folks.